Where did the time go? I'm Joseph. This is Input English. Today I have a story for you. The story is for Comprehensible Input. Stories are among the best ways of using comprehensible input to acquire a new language, in this case, English. If you can follow this story, if you can understand what is happening in the story, you will acquire the language. I started out with the question, where did the time go? That question was posed by Robert, but he wasn't talking to anyone in particular. He was alone in his office. He just exclaimed, where did the time go? Robert has just looked at his cell phone and he saw that it was 6:15 in the evening. He had worked late. He had gotten caught up in his work and he lost track of time. He knew that he needed to get home for dinner with his family. He picked up his phone to send a text message to Kathy, and then he thought better of it. He thought, no, she's probably busy fixing dinner and she doesn't need me to interrupt her. He didn't say any of this out loud. These were his thoughts. He decided to not text her because he would be home in 10 minutes, and he can't get home any quicker by stopping to interrupt her with a text message. With that, he turned out the light and went out to his car. He locked his office and he relocked the hardware store as he left. Everyone else was gone. When Robert got home, the house was very quiet. He didn't hear any sounds at all. He looked in the kitchen expecting that Kathy would be fixing dinner, but he saw that there was no one in the kitchen and the lights were off. There was no evidence of any food preparation at all. Now this is where Robert's good manners showed. He did not yell into the house trying to find out if anyone was home. Robert doesn't yell. Instead, he walked quietly to Kathy's office, figuring that she would probably be working in her office. He knew that she had a lot to do today, and he figured that she was probably working late too. He was correct. When he got to her office, she heard him approach. She closed her laptop and spun her chair around to greet him. She stood up from the chair and greeted him very warmly. After this greeting, he asked her what was going on. He asked, where are the boys? Do they still live here? And what about dinner? What are we going to do for dinner? Now, asking Kathy whether her two young sons still live there was just a joke. It was lighthearted, and it was received as such. Kathy continued the joke by saying, yes, for the time being, they still live here. She went on to explain that Craig was reading Huckleberry Finn and that he was sitting in Robert's chair, but then she speculated that Craig probably heard Robert get home, and so by now she expects that Craig is on the couch. She explained this to Robert. Robert smiled and said, so Craig likes my chair. Kathy said, only when you're not home. Robert's response was, there's no harm in that. Kathy then explained that Bobby was drawing in his room. With that, Robert said, so what are we going to do about dinner? Kathy winced. She said, I haven't done anything for dinner. And then she quickly changed her demeanor and said, I've got it. Let's call in a takeout order to that Thai restaurant. The food will be delicious, it'll be easy, and it'll be quick. We can be eating dinner in 15 or 20 minutes. This idea was very satisfying to Robert. Kathy continued by saying, I know exactly what I want to order. It'll be great. Robert then said that he wanted to go check on the boys, and Kathy volunteered that she would come along to see how they were doing. When they got to the living room, they found that Craig was indeed on the couch reading The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. When they arrived, he placed the bookmark into the book and closed it. He greeted his parents. His dad asked, "How's it going?" Craig said, "I really like this book." Kathy explained that they would be getting Thai takeout and asked Craig if he had any preferences. Craig realized that they would be eating family style and that she would probably order 3 different entrees, so he would easily find delicious food for dinner on the table. He had no preferences. With that, Robert and Kathy went up to Bobby's room and they found Bobby at his little desk drawing. When they arrived, he stopped drawing and greeted them. He quickly said, "Let me show you what I've been doing." He then spread a bunch of pictures on the desk. He has been drawing all afternoon and he has made dozens of pictures. He drew a variety of things. He drew some leaves, and they quickly saw that the leaf that he was drawing was actually a dried leaf that was sitting on the desk. He had been drawing looking at a leaf that he had picked up in the yard, a large brown golden maple leaf. There were also pictures of a boy, but they couldn't tell from the portrait who the boy was. They didn't recognize the likeness. There were 2 pictures of Oscar, and these 2 pictures were much better than the ones he had generated in the recent weeks. He's really gotten better at drawing. The big surprise for the 2 parents was that there were more than a dozen pictures of acorns. On the desk, there were several acorns, and Bobby had drawn very good pictures of these acorns. Some of the pictures showed 1 acorn, and some of the pictures had 2 acorns. This is where the parents were very surprised, because these sketches, these pencil sketches of the acorns had shadows, a lot of detail, and they could see that he had changed the position with respect to the light because the shadows were different in the different pictures he had drawn. He had been playing with the lighting and had drawn different shadows. Both parents were astonished with the quality of his sketches. Each acorn was nearly 2 inches tall, which is quite a bit bigger than the actual size of the acorn. He had magnified them all. Robert asked, "Why acorns?" And Bobby said, "Why not?" That casual answer actually surprised both parents. They didn't expect that out of a 9-year-old boy. It turns out Bobby has been watching YouTube videos on drawing technique, sketching technique, and a lot of the videos that he watched showed techniques for drawing heads and portraits. Bobby figured that the shape of an acorn and the shape of a head were pretty similar, and so he used the techniques he had learned in the video for portraiture to draw acorns as if they were little heads. Kathy explained to Bobby that she was going to place a takeout order and then speculated that perhaps Bobby would want to go with his dad to pick up dinner. Bobby didn't answer with words, he just nodded enthusiastically. He was going to go along for the ride. He wanted to tag along. When someone says tag along, that means they're going to accompany someone, but their presence isn't essential for the task. They're just going along for the ride. Kathy went downstairs to place the takeout order, and Robert sat on the bed and wanted to discuss these pictures in more detail with his son. He wanted Bobby to know how impressed he was at the work that was done this afternoon. Soon, Robert and Bobby had returned from the restaurant with the takeout, and dinner was served. Now, when dinner was served, everyone was very hungry. And so the natural result was that when dinner began, everyone at the table was busy eating, so it was nearly silent. There was no talking because everyone was busy eating. After a short while, as people started getting satisfied with their meal, conversation resumed. Robert explained that he had had a very unusual afternoon because he really got involved in his work. He got absorbed in his work, and he really enjoyed it. It was challenging, but he was making good progress. There were no interruptions, and he really enjoyed what he was doing. Time seemed to pass very quickly. He found the whole afternoon very pleasant. He explained that to the other family members. When Robert had finished, Kathy said, "It's funny, but I had pretty much the same experience. I had been dreading the work I needed to do on this brief. It was an unpleasant chore hanging over me, and I just couldn't get started. But since I have a deadline coming, it needs to be in on Monday, I needed to start, so I did. But once I got into it, it was enjoyable. There were no interruptions. It was challenging, but I made a lot of progress pretty quickly. I found it very rewarding and enjoyable. I too lost track of time. That's why we're having takeout. If I hadn't been so engrossed in my work, I would have put together some dinner and we would be eating something different." Kathy then turned to Craig and asked what he thought about the adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Craig smiled and said, "It's a great book. It's a little hard to read. I don't know some of the words, but I can follow the story, and the story is great." He continued and explained that he felt like he was in the story. He lost track of the fact that he was a boy reading a book, and instead he was in the story. Robert asked how many pages he had read, and Craig said 93 pages. He was proud of that. Craig had never read 93 pages in one day ever before. Then Craig turned to his dad and said, "You wouldn't believe what Mom did today." That surprised Robert. What did she do that was so amazing? I thought she was working in her office. Craig continued, "The two of us went out in the yard in the rain and we found lots of things. We found lots of crawling things in the yard in the rain. It was really fun. I felt like I was in a jungle." Robert glanced at Kathy and saw that she was smiling, and she nodded, confirming that she had taken her son out in the rain for a little jungle adventure. Robert turned to Bobby and said, "You know, your pictures are really good. I'm so glad we sent you to that art camp, and you've really run with it. You really have made a lot of progress." Bobby's parents could tell that he really enjoyed his drawing experience. Kathy summarized what she had observed. She explained to the others at the table that each member of the family was faced with a rainy day, and they each found something that was challenging, something about which they had a clear goal. They were able to focus on the task and be challenged by it. They had no interruptions, and they really enjoyed what they were doing. She then asked the others at the table, did they notice that everyone lost track of the time and just kept doing what they were enjoying. Robert and the boys all nodded. They had all noticed that. Kathy finished her summary by saying, "We were all in flow." She continued by pointing out that this pleasant experience of being in flow would not be restricted to the things that they were each doing, because one can find a flow state with a lot of different activities if one is doing something that is challenging and interesting. I invite comments below, and if you like videos like this, be sure to click on this one next. See you soon.